Airstrikes have weakened Tehran, but not broken it. Now Kurdish leaders are saying the quiet part out loud. Without boots on the ground, the regime won't fall. Peshmerga ready, uprisings possible waiting on Washington. The war has reached its turning point. So who makes the first move, and does this become a ground war? As the war intensifies, a new front may be opening, not from the skies, but on the ground where Kurdish forces say they could decide the outcome of the conflict in Iran. Iran's regime has been significantly weakened by ongoing US and Israeli strikes. But it is unlikely to fall without a ground offensive led by Kurdish forces, according to a senior figure from one of Iran's Kurdish opposition groups. Sheikh Hosseini, General Secretary of the Khabat Organisation, told The Telegraph that if Kurdish Peshmerga forces were deployed and uprisings encouraged across Iran's Kurdish regions, the fall of the regime would be much closer.
If we are not on this battlefield, the end of the regime will either not occur or be delayed by a lot. If our Peshmerga were on the ground and we told the people of Rojava to rise, then the fall of the regime would have been much closer by now.
The Iranian Kurdish groups have long sought to take part in efforts to challenge the regime, with ambitions of securing greater autonomy or potentially establishing an independent state. However, signals from Washington have been inconsistent. In the early days of the conflict, President Donald Trump expressed support for Kurdish involvement, calling it a positive development. Days later, he appeared to reverse course, suggesting the war was already too complex to involve Kurdish forces. Despite this uncertainty, Kurdish groups have formed a new coalition in the lead-up to the war and remain determined to act. Hosseini said they are seeking clarity on US policy.
We want to understand America's policy. At one point, Trump said we're going to stop fighting. But then, hours later, he said, "No, the war is going to continue." We don't understand their position at the moment. We can still launch an invasion alone, but with their help, it will be much better.
Kurdish leaders have welcomed US and Israeli strikes, viewing them as having sufficiently weakened Iran's leadership structure. Several senior figures have been killed in targeted operations, further destabilizing the regime. The Kurdish population, numbering around 40 million across Iran, Iraq, Syria, and Turkey, has long faced marginalization, and many now see the conflict as an opportunity to push for self-governance. However, the prospect of involving Kurdish forces remains contentious. Critics, including political figures in Iraq, have warned against treating Kurdish groups as instruments of larger powers.
The regime is very damaged now, but the US needs a strategy to fully overthrow it. The conditions are good now on the ground. The conditions are great for us to go into Iran. But we shouldn't forget that we are guests here, and we cannot pose a threat on Iraqi Kurdistan. If we take any action, it could put the Iraqi Kurdistan region under threat.
At the same time, discussions are underway in Washington about expanding the US military role in the region. Officials are reportedly considering options that could include deploying additional troops on ground, securing key locations, such as the Strait of Hormuz, and potentially targeting strategic sites like Khabat Island, a major hub for Iran's oil exports. A White House official told Reuters.
There has been no decision to send ground troops at this time, but President Trump wisely keeps all options at his disposal. The president is focused on achieving all of the defined objectives of Operation Epic Fury: destroy Iran's ballistic missile capacity, annihilate their navy, ensure their terrorist proxies cannot destabilize the region, and guarantee that Iran can never possess a nuclear weapon.
As the war enters a critical phase, the question of whether Kurdish forces or even US troops will be drawn into a ground campaign, shaping not only the outcome in Iran, but the future balance of power across the region. tensions between the United States and Iran continue to escalate, a new front could be opening inside Iran itself. Iranian Kurdish armed groups say they are preparing for the possibility of launching attacks against Tehran's forces if an opportunity emerges. Leaders from Kurdish militant factions operating near Iran's western border say they are closely watching the evolving conflict between Iran and the United States. According to several Kurdish commanders, their forces are prepared to strike Iranian government positions if the current crisis weakens Tehran's grip on its border regions. These Kurdish fighters are based primarily in the mountainous areas along the Iran-Iraq frontier, particularly in Iraq's Kurdistan region. Some of these groups have fought the Iranian government for decades, seeking greater autonomy or political rights for Iran's Kurdish minority. Reports in recent days have suggested that President Donald Trump spoke with Mustafa Hijri, the leader of KDPI, as Washington explores possible Kurdish involvement in pressure on Iran. Now they say the wider regional conflict could create a rare strategic opening.
The Iranian Kurdish resistance movement is actually very strong, because we have been on the ground since the Iranian Revolution. If the situation inside Iran changes and the regime becomes weaker, we are ready to move and take action.
However, Kurdish leaders also acknowledge that any such move carries enormous risks. Analysts warn that Kurdish groups in Iran are facing a difficult strategic dilemma.
We are ready and our party is well organized. But right now we do not have any intention to enter Iranian Kurdistan because the ground forces in this war have not been a topic. It's very easy to start a war, but it will be more complicated how to end this war.
While the escalating confrontation between Washington and Tehran could present an opportunity for Kurdish militant groups, it also carries serious risks. Analysts warn that any attempt by Kurdish factions to join the conflict could provoke a powerful response from Iranian security forces. Research from the British think tank Chatham House suggests Kurdish groups are facing a difficult strategic calculation. Entering the conflict could potentially strengthen their position against Tehran, but it could also expose them to severe retaliation from the Islamic Republic. Iran has historically responded aggressively to Kurdish insurgent activity. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC, has long been deployed to suppress militant groups operating along Iran's western border regions. Meanwhile, Iran's Revolutionary Guards say they have targeted a US base in Iraq's Kurdistan region.
The headquarters of the invading US Army in Al Haria Air Base in the Kurdistan region was targeted with 5 missiles.
For Kurdish groups operating near Iran's frontier, this escalation presents both opportunity and danger. Iranian forces could become stretched if Tehran faces multiple security threats at once. But Kurdish fighters also fear that openly joining the conflict could trigger large-scale retaliation, not only against militant groups, but also against Kurdish civilian areas.